A Silicon Valley flying cowboy runs out of gas in his Carbon Cub on his morning commute from Monterey up to Palo Alto and safely puts the aircraft down into oncoming traffic on I-85 near Cupertino. And the Reddit thread goes crazy, including a new song, "I'm a cowboy, on a carbon horse I ride, and I'm wanted for landing on I-85. And Mom says,
"Plane is even okay." That's my boy. He's a great pilot. He really is.
The plane is called a carbon.
It's Monday, November 5th. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the BLANCOLIRIO channel, and let's check it out. Starting first with the Aviation Safety Network. A Cub Crafter's Carbon Cub Supersport made a forced landing on southbound Highway 85, so he was landing to the north into southbound traffic, going head-on with the traffic near Cupertino, California, following an in-flight fuel exhaustion event. Fuel exhaustion versus fuel starvation. There was no usable fuel left anywhere on board the aircraft. The sole pilot was not injured, and the aircraft was not damaged. Here's some exclusive video shot by a BLANCOLIRIO fan, unfortunately filmed in vertical mode, just as the aircraft was rolling out, following the forced landing. Definitely a dead stick, the prop straight up. Another short video clip from the same viewer showing the southbound traffic working their way around the Carbon Cub. And some pictures on X from the San Jose CHP, California Highway Patrol, showing the aircraft off to the side. The ADS-B data from the flight shows the aircraft taking off out of Monterey and climbing up to an altitude of about 3,200 feet here, and then working his way down below the Class B airspace, and it looks like right about in here is where the engine failure occurred. So he was at about 800 feet when the engine, when he ran out of gas, and Mr. Airspeed and Mr. Altitude head down pretty quickly from there. So according to that data, that puts him right about here at 85 and Stelling Road with very few options. He mentions on a interview with the news that he was considering a football field. It might have been one of these ball fields here, but he claims he saw kids out there, and so he just opted to continue on with the forced landing on 85. There's some golf courses, but they're well off to the side here, probably not within reach at an altitude of 800 feet from here. And here's the busy airspace that he has to contend with, including the Class C airspace from San Jose and the Class B airspace from San Francisco, as he works his way up towards Palo Alto. Back here at the Aviation Safety Network, they even have a link to the ATC audio of the entire incident as published here on YouTube at ATC Spotlight. So let's check out how he handles this emergency with ATC.
And that's Palace Tower. Go ahead.
I'm a Carbon Cub, Charlie 19er, over. Let's see, Los Gatos, losing my engine. I'm actually, can you give me a squawk and pick me up?
Charlie 19er, Palo 2 Tower, standby. And Charlie 19er, squawk 5361.
Okay, 5361 on Charlie for Carbon Cub 902 Lima Golf.
Remember, 7700 is always an option. That'll get their attention.
November, Charlie 19er, make straight in, runway 31, clear to land.
Negative, can't make the field. Just see if you can pick me up. I'm going to have to go down over what looks like, I think, 280 somewhere.
Roger.
No problem. I'm out of fuel.
Charlie 19er, are you able to make a right-hand turn towards San Jose as well?
Negative. I'm continuing north here. I'm going to have to go down over the freeway. I'm still running right now, but I know I'm out of fuel.
Roger. Palo Alto wind is currently 190 at 4, altimeter 3019er.
This field.
Charlie 19er, roger.
Alright, I'm not going to make the field. I'm going down on the freeway. This is not going to be free.
Charlie 19er, roger. And Charlie 19er, when able, will you be able to land north of 280? Roger. And Charlie 19er, see persons on board.
So they send the Cirrus over to see if they can find the Carbon Cub landed on the freeway. Because the first thing in the event of an emergency is to get a squawk code from ATC. Aviate, navigate, communicate, right? The pilot gave a short interview here on the local news channel, and in his own words,
at 6 in the morning and asked the airport to fill the plane up with fuel.
We don't know what happened, if that happened or it didn't, but clearly I had an engine out.
Conway made a mayday call into the Palo Alto airport where he was headed. They tried to divert him to San Jose, but he said he wouldn't have made it, so he had to think fast.
I then saw kids running out into the football field I was trying to make, and I couldn't make that. Northbound traffic on 85 was back to back, and nobody would be able to see me coming down on top of them, so I opted to land on the southbound lane.
He made that landing just around 7:15 Monday morning on southbound Highway 85, just before De Anza Boulevard.
I was rocking my wings to try and get everybody's attention, and I had to put it down.
No one was injured. It took crews 6 hours to remove the plane after taking the wings off and loading it onto a tow truck. Neighbors took to the overpass for hours, watching the process unfold.
It was a miracle that he didn't hit any oncoming traffic since he landed into oncoming traffic.
Could have been a disaster.
The plane wasn't the only disruption on the southbound side of Highway 85 Monday morning. As crews were preparing to interview the CHP about the plane landing, 2 trucks crashed into each other and hit a CHP patrol car. No one was seriously hurt. After that, a 6-car crash closed all lanes of Highway 85 South just a couple of minutes from where crews were still clearing the plane, adding to the traffic nightmare. Though grateful that there were no serious injuries, Conway said he's sorry for the impact on the community.
I just feel horrible to everybody in their morning commute and all the first responders here.
After the wings were removed, the plane was towed to Palo Alto.
the Reddit subboard quickly found the pilot's webpage and LinkedIn page, where here on LinkedIn, he basically admitted that he failed in his pre-flight duties to make sure that his tanks were full of fuel. He says, "A reminder that everything is limited and not without consequence. I might have ordered fuel that was not delivered. My gauges might have looked full in the pre-dawn darkness, and I might have even stuck a tight landing between power lines and overpasses, but in the end it was luck that it didn't happen moments before over the Santa Cruz Mountains, which he'd just crossed at that 3,000 plus feet." Now, the fuel sight gauges in the Carbon Cub are dead simple, similar to most of these light tail dragger aircraft. It's just a sight tube that shows you exactly the fuel level of the aircraft. But if the tanks are full, you may not see the end of the fuel or the top of the fuel there at the top of the gauge, especially in the dark. That's why when I go to fuel my aircraft nowadays, when I go to the airport, I want to turn my cell phone off into airplane mode so I'm not distracted, and then I like to do all of my own fueling of my own aircraft. I never rely on somebody else to fuel my own aircraft. I'll call for the fuel or the fuel truck, and then I'll personally pour the fuel into the tank because they're old airplanes and I don't want them scratched up, and I want the fuel administered correctly, and I know exactly how much fuel is in the tank every time. And then I can carefully see on the sight gauge exactly where I'm at on the fuel. But a quick glance at these sight gauges in the dark, you may miss the fact that no, the tanks are not completely full, they're completely empty. And another thing about these sight gauges is they read one indication when the aircraft's sitting on the ground down on their tail, and then they read another indication when they're up in level flight. Thus you can see on the left and right side of these fuel gauges different fuel readings based on whether the aircraft is in flight or on the ground. And that's another after takeoff checklist item I like to do, is I like to look outside and make sure I didn't leave the fuel cap off and fuel's not spraying out over the top of the wings, and also take a look at the fuel gauges themselves and verify how much fuel is on board the aircraft now that we're in level flight, and compare that to the rest of the duration of your flight. On his personal website, he calls himself a pilot, a writer, and a headhunter, and he builds early teams and companies commonly associated with the so-called PayPal Mafia. So that's his connection to the whole Silicon Valley universe. And he leaves some interesting musings about what it's like to be a pilot. I'm sure he'll have more to write about now. So in the end, mechanics were able to take the wings off the Carbon Cub and quickly get it disassembled on the flatbed and out of harm's way there, and a family gets to rejoice in having their father return to the family in one piece. But once again, reminding us, even a very successful and smart, sharp person, if life gets busy, you get distracted, can make a very, very basic mistake, and I applaud him for admitting his mistake of running the aircraft out of fuel. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.